Hello, everyone. Welcome to Dynamic Character Productions' weekly recap of our fifth mini Trinity Falls. I'm your host, Jon Millsip, and today I am joined by two fantastic guests, both from our last long game, Monte Carlo. We have McKenna Inglis and Micah Johnson. How are you two doing today?
Great. Feeling great. Doing great. Just changed my name, so I am actually McKenna Inglis. Um, but really excited to talk about these two episodes.
Yeah, I'm doing fantastic over here as well. So excited to be back in like the Survivor Org community, just getting involved. I've been enjoying the season. I've been watching it at work as well because can't get enough of it, you know. So it's definitely a great season so far. So I'm excited to tackle the last two episodes with you.
Well, then let's do just that. Let's dive right in. So, at the top of our first episode this week, we have Lex saying that Ben was someone who was just too good at manipulating people in order to keep him around. Of course, we're coming off that very exciting Ben boot there, where it made it kind of look like, it was between Ben and Jon. Ben ultimately leaves. Lydia at this point has made a list of all the relationships in the game and all the relationships he's realizing who's connected to who, how strong each of the relationships are. She's putting in a lot of analysis in here. Micah, when you're in a mini, how do you manage to get all this information written down and kept in order so that you can process it quickly?
Yeah, it's definitely a huge social game. Like it's a quick social game though as well, where like okay, you have to know who you can trust the best, and then try to get information from others as well, and see like oh how do they interact when I'm in the room, and versus like when like someone else that I'm aligned with in the room with. So Lydia having those great connections and the great social game, she's able to get all the information that she needs, and it's like okay I'm picking up on this and this. So it's incredible to watch and just see her guide her game through this.
Yeah, and of course, we also have this dissection of what she also thinks she's playing too similar of a game to Emily, and she feels that the two of them are too similar to go to the end. And then we also see Emily in her confessional right after this saying that if Vee and Lydia get to the end, they're going to win. So, McKenna, what do you do when you get into an instance like this in the game where you perceive yourself too similar to someone else in the game?
You got to get them out. um, I mean, I know what you're hinting at, but I think it's really interesting because as a viewer, I see Lydia and Emily as threats, but for different reasons. So it's really interesting that Lydia is viewing herself similar to Emily. Um, I think Lydia's playing a much more controlled and precise game. But to me, that makes, your immediate target has to be Emily if you're Lydia. And obviously Emily's been trying to get Lydia out for a while, and it's
Hasn't worked.
yeah. So yeah, that's I would say if you're playing too close and you can't differentiate at the end, the third person may as well win if it's the final three, you know.
Yeah.
Yeah, definitely. And then we the last thought we get from Lydia here is that she's still planning to stick with Vee and Lex, who's someone she's made a connection with over the last couple of rounds, and probably Sarah. Sarah seems to be someone who most people find very agreeable with, someone that they can work with. Very interested to talk about Sarah as these two episodes progress and the plan she's thrown out there. That takes us to our first immunity challenge, rolling with my homies. So immediately, Alex and McKenna tell everyone to pair up, take a pair, figure it out, do it. We see that moment of hesitation between everyone, but eventually we start seeing these pairs form. Emily and Sarah, Jon and Lydia, Lo and Austin, and then Vee and Lex finally form. Micah, originally you see these pairs get together. What are you thinking?
I think they were kind of strategic with it, being like, okay, it's all about duos, and like I do have like a close ally here, but I also don't want to give that away and be like, okay, I'm gonna work with someone that like you might be surprised, as they said. I'm not sure who said this, but like, oh, we haven't really worked together. You want to pair up, and so they paired. It was Jon and Lydia that were like that, and so they paired up, and they're like, let's do this. So, and then when they finally find out what they're doing is like, oh, they're going against each other versus actually working together. It's like, oh, well, there goes that whole idea. But like having that thought of like, okay, we're gonna work together kind of thing. It's like, okay, I kind of want to see how we would do to work together. It's a great strategy on like, okay, yeah, I would want to work with someone that I'm not that close with, because like, who knows what can happen with that. So
Yeah, and we see Lo in a confessional later say the exact same thing. It was her reasoning for picking Austin when Vee and Lex were both there as options.
Yeah.
It was just picking up the person she hadn't really worked with before and like trying to build those bonds. It probably a very smart strategy going into this, not knowing, of course, that Alex is then going to reveal you're not competing with these people, you are competing against these people in the first round of this challenge. So in this challenge, each castaway is going to set up 3 solo cups beside each other along a wall, and they have to roll a ping pong ball into each cup. Once the ping pong ball lands in the cup, they raise the cup up, and then that cup and ball are out of the challenge. And as soon as the first 4 people, so the first person in each pairing to hit all 3 cups, move on to the second round. So we see the challenge roll on, as we could say here. But more importantly, this isn't just an immunity challenge. It's also a reward challenge, with the winner also receiving 20% off of their purchase from Vintage Survivor Store. So as the challenge goes, we have Lo, Lex, Emily, and Lydia winning in their pairs, advancing to the second round. Now, the second round, things get a little dicier. No, we're not introducing dice to the challenge. Don't worry. We're just moving the cups a little further apart, and between where the contestants standing to roll the cups and the cups, they're putting an index card between each cup, kind of in an arch, to act as a bit of an obstacle, changing the way they have to approach the challenge. We see in this moment, Lex is putting so much force into the rolling of his balls that they are bouncing clear over these obstacles. And sure enough, Lex ends up winning individual immunity. One of the most excited reactions we've ever seen to an immunity win here. Not only telling us, but also telling the people who are in the house with him how excited he is to win immunity here. McKenna, what are you thinking of Lex in this moment?
Well, my first thought when watching the challenge is I like don't know if Lex is a genius or just downright bold to be doing this on carpet. Like, what the heck? And so I don't know if he was like meaning to bounce the balls or if that's just what happened. I don't know. That's like really all I was looking at. But I love Lex and I love Lex's reactions to everything, and like Lex came in saying like I'm a big personality and I talk a lot, and this is like the biggest we've seen him. Just like it was so fun and so exciting, and I really don't think it like put a target on his back or anything like that. Like it was so sweet to hear him say I won, like turning to whoever's in the house and saying I won. It was just like a really kind of broke that tension a little bit moment. I really enjoyed it, and I laughed. I just like laughed at it. It was fun.
So much fun to watch.
Yeah, Lex is quite the character. I mean, even as we go into this next travel room, I mean, he gave us the line, "We got the eggs, time to scramble." I mean, what a guy Lex is. So we have a few of the castaways talking about the fact that, they all really didn't want to pair with someone they were working with closely in the challenge. We get Austin saying he was nervous when it became clear they were competing in pairs, because despite the fact like he kind of wanted to be paired with Lo, being against Lo is dangerous because Lo is very good at challenges so far.
Yeah.
Lowe explained she had some tech issues or something happening in the second half of the challenge that just made her a little befuddled and made it so that she didn't really get to it as quickly as everyone else did. Jon then mentions that he doesn't know who voted for him last round, remembering that, Vee had thrown out this vote, but it's okay because Vee's going to tell him right away that it was her. Micah, when you're in a situation, and it's like someone's putting a throwaway vote out like that, is there merit in like hunting down who's putting your vote out like that? Or should you just be focusing on the current round at hand?
There's two sides to it, because like if I was in that situation, it's like I do want to know who did it, like because then like that gets my name out there. So then like, oh, Micah has gotten a vote in the past, like he'd still, like we could easily vote him, no blood on our hands. But then it's also like having, like, if Vee gave him the warning beforehand, then maybe like a better relationship could form from it. Being like, hey, I know that the votes aren't going towards you, but like I don't that couldn't happen though, because like that'd be they're not really that close, so it's like can't really like, yeah, I'm gonna vote for you, this is why. I'm so but I think, I don't know, I wouldn't, at this point I wouldn't hunt down, because it's like it's only one vote. I would just be like, okay, I realize like in the back of my head someone did vote for me, but it's only one person, so clearly they weren't on the same page as everyone else, or they had their own agenda that I don't know what they're doing. So let's hopefully move on and move forward and recover my game, so my name isn't out there again next round. So
McKenna, what do you make of Vee just owning up to the vote right away?
It's not what I would do. But it doesn't shock me seeing the conversation that we had, or that we saw from Vee around the idol clue, when she just was like, I got a clue, I'm gonna do something about it, I solved it, I'm gonna say the phrase. And so it's not shocking to me. And I also, like, we hear Vee's confessional this episode where she's like, I am on the bottom. And maybe she thinks telling Jon that she voted for him can save some face. I Like I said, it's not necessarily what I would do, but I can see where she's coming from, and if that's her personality to begin with, or her prerogative in games, like, more power to you, you know. And I think Jon, like, as a viewer, Jon respected that a lot, and like he turned around and told people that he respected that. So maybe it was a good move on her end.
yeah, I've also noticed with this cast, like they've also, like, if someone did like vote for them, but they're still there, they're like, okay, I kind of want to know who they kind of hunted down. I'm like, interesting choice. Like I wouldn't do that, because like I want to stay alive, and that might be like they're paranoid, they're kind of like, what, like, just let it go, you're still here, calm down. But it's fun to see different casts take votes. So
Yeah, definitely. You're right. It is something that's really persisted throughout the season, where these one-off votes, people are very intent on figuring out who is putting these names out. We saw Austin talking about the fact that Ben had voted for him a couple of times previously and stuff last week. So yeah, those thoughts are definitely out there. And speaking of Austin, he's getting a little nervous because he thinks he'll be the target when everyone decides to go after the 2 of 4, because there are still 4 of them left in the game. But we do also see Sarah, Jon, Austin, and Lowe talking about voting out Vee this round, because Vee's just too social, too likable, and playing a lot in the background. And they're worried that someone like that could just skate on by to the end and then end up winning the game. Lex tells Lydia he hasn't heard a name. And this is kind of what I noticed through these 2 episodes, was a lot of people being like, okay, what's the name? What's the name? What's the name? And no one owning to a name being said, or just no name being said for a very long time in these scramble sections. And the way that they're all pretending this is happening is just saying there's no name, which we saw happen with the Luke vote at the merge, where Luke was panicking because he hadn't heard a name. So when you're at this point in the game and you're not hearing a name, you need to be putting a name out there in these instances. And like we see Lydia doing that. Like when Lex says to Lydia that he hasn't heard a name, the two of them make their end game deal, which isn't a final two, but it's just to get us deep in the game. I love the way Lydia phrases this because she says, I haven't made an end game deal yet. She doesn't promise final two at all. She chooses her words very carefully. But Lex is able to coax a name out of Lydia to where she says, there are two options I think they're here. We either break up this duo of Austin and Jon, or we get rid of Emily.
Mm-hmm.
With all the talk about duos that persist through this episode, McKenna, is it wise for Lydia, who is clearly in a duo, to mention the other duo in this situation?
I don't know. I feel like, so she wants to break up Tugela. She's talking to, or she doesn't want to break up Tugela, but she sees these two within the four.
Mm-hmm.
And she, I guess if Lex is also in that four, you have to frame it like, I'm not breaking up Tugela, I'm breaking up this pair.
Mm-hmm.
I mean, she feels somewhat close to Emily, so not close enough to throw Emily's or not, against Emily enough to throw Emily's name. And I feel like Jon had been on the table before, so it seemed natural to throw Jon's name. And then kind of pairing it with Austin gives more choice to Lex.
Mm-hmm.
So if I'm coming out to Lex, I'm saying, listen, it needs to be Jon, it needs to be Jon, it needs to be Jon. And he's like, oh, heck no. If you bring it as a two, like, I don't care either one, maybe that earns you a point, or, it earns you safety next round. Like, hey, Lydia's not throwing out your name, she's throwing out options.
Mm-hmm. Mike, what do you think about just bringing this to Lex in general, who is already like lumped in with this Tugela 4?
Yeah.
We talked about it a little bit last week, where like, do you bring this type of information to Lex? Can you trust him with this information?
It definitely depends on the relationship that you have with that person at the time of the game. And it's like, okay, how much can I like trust you at this point, being like, okay, I know that you are close with these two people, but I'm also going to give you this third option, being like, okay, here's the thing. Like, I see these two people close. I get that you're with them as well in a 4 kind of way. But then also, so like, it would be nice to get rid of one of those two, but I'm also like willing, like I like Emily. She's great, but I could easily cut ties. And like you see that with like a lot of people saying like, okay, I could easily get rid of you or you. No hard feelings. Like, I'm not like personally attached to you. Like, I could see you go fine. And where it's a bold strategy on Lydia's part, being like, okay, yeah, let's bring up these two people out of the 4. But yeah, I don't know. So
that's where I would have thrown Emily's name, just because, like we talked about earlier, in her confessional, like, you're playing similarly to Emily.
mm-hmm.
And you see Lydia feels like Lex is shooting her straight, and as does everyone else. But like, if you truly feel that bond with Lex, and that, like you said, you have that relationship with Lex, and it might be time to cut Emily, who's obviously a threat.
Mm-hmm.
And if no name's been said, why not put hers on the table? Like, I guess that's a different option she could have taken there.
Yeah.
Well, ultimately, we do see Lex and Lydia agree that they should split up this pairing of Austin and Jon. They don't come to a name here. Emily, at this point, is also in the room with them, agrees, yeah, okay, we should split this grouping up. We then cut over to Sarah and Austin, who are just talking about, you know what, I'm really glad we've made it this far in this game so far. It's our first game. Like, I'm really proud of how far we've made it. Man, I sure hope Lex jumps in this room so we can figure out what to do. This sort of passiveness at this point in the game, like, Where's the urgency? There are only 8 people left in this game. You got to do something about this, Sarah and Austin. I'm glad you are happy you're doing so well because you have been doing well. You are playing great games, but come on, we need some urgency.
Literally, like I've never seen more like a more chill kind of version of a mini game. I'm like, I feel like I was scrambling so many times when I've done my minis. So I'm like, what? How are they not like throwing out? Like, I knew what side I was on. I was like, okay, gung ho, like get them out, gone. And they're like, who should we do? Someone say something? And it's like, how do you not already have a plan? Like, you have a plan. And you must have like a close ally. Someone give someone something. Like,
and if that's your close ally, why aren't you strategically speaking?
Yeah.
Like I am a fairly passive player, but also can recognize like, oh my God, there's only 2 of us and there's 6 other people and they're probably in 2 groups of 3, which means it's one of us.
Yeah.
It was really interesting. And then Austin gets pulled and she's like, the only person I was talking to, like, go talk to somebody else. Like go figure out what the name is. It was like just so interesting.
Yeah.
But yeah, they are playing really well and it should be celebrated, but it was just funny.
Yeah.
Conversation.
Emily and Lex are then talking about how Lydia and Vee are just as dangerous as a pairing as Jon and Austin are. So again, this pulls into that whole Vee saying Jon and Austin are a duo, kind of reflects back on herself and Vee. We then see Lo and Lydia and Vee talking, and Lo says she did in fact vote for Ben last round, but I love the way she phrases this because she then immediately says, oh, Vee, it was going to be you, but I took your name off the block there. Mm-hmm. Fantastic maneuvering by Lo to tell the truth and then just make it seem like she's still working with these people, despite the fact that she didn't vote with them.
Mm-hmm. 100%.
Then the 3 of them decide to go for Austin because he's probably a bigger challenge threat than Jon at this point. So Jon's strategy that he expressed last episode of kind of like holding back in challenges because he heard his name out there as a bit of a challenge beast seems to be paying off for him. It does seem to be that people aren't thinking him as strong as other people. Lo, totally okay with this plan because she hasn't heard a name at this point. It's so hard to gauge when exactly during the scramble time this was. But like based on the edit, it feels like it's about halfway through. It's like if you're not hearing names at this point, if what you're saying is true, this is scary. Start saying names, please.
And scary for you. Like if you haven't heard a name, it's probably you.
Yeah.
It's like, what are they saying in the other rooms that I'm not in? Yeah.
Right.
Then Lex gives us his duo speech of how he sees all these duos and everything. And then he's having this conversation with Sarah. And Sarah says she didn't realize that Jon and Austin were closer than she was with each of them. And I don't know. If you get to that moment and you're just that wide opening, I'd be panicking. I know that. But Sarah's so calm about it all. It's fast. Sarah's game is so fascinating at this point because it almost feels like she's a step behind in the strategy a lot of the time. But she's so likable that her name's not coming up as an option at all.
Only as someone to take to the end.
Yeah, that's how I see it as. It's like people are viewing her like, oh, she's a good ally. Like she hasn't made big moves. She hasn't driven anything. She's just been a number. So like, who's gonna vote for her at the end, kind of thing. So it's like, I could take her but she'll have a case where she can, like, as if she can get it out, then she could take it. So
arguably, if she's working so closely with this people, that all these 3 people might just be votes for her in the end too.
Yeah.
We then get Sarah justifying, she's making the argument that Vee and Lydia are a stronger pairing than Jon and Austin. It does kind of reek of, I'm trying to protect my people here, but it is good work by Sarah. to say that, to phrase it the way she did, so that gets the thought process on Vee and Lydia a lot more.
Mhm.
And then we get probably one of the most pivotal moments of the entire episode, and it's Lex in a large group. He's with Lo, Emily, and Jon at the time, and he's explaining how Vee and Lydia are these big targets at this point. Because they're this duo, they're working strongly together, and then Vee and Lydia join the conversation while he's talking about them as a pair, and he seamlessly pivots the conversation to make it look like he is telling Jon that this is the perception people have of him in Austin.
Mhm.
I'm looking at this from an outside perspective here, and I'm like, I don't know if that was so sleek, but Emily thought it was the smoothest thing in the entire world. Emily, in her confessional, talks about Lex being this sneaky snake with his emerald scales and one red ruby eye and everything. And Emily clearly depicting Lex as this massive threat. Micah, did Lex make a mistake showing this type of verbal maneuvering here?
I think he was saving his ass because he saw, oh, these people are coming in. But then that opened up Emily's eyes on Lex, being like, oh, he's quick on his feet. He can think and change the direction, making it seem like these two are safe and that they wouldn't go after them. So it's like, oh, I have to be like aware of like how Lex is speaking with other people as well, like when things are changing. So it's like, how much can you take? So it is kind of like I think he did what he needed to do correctly, but like it was like oh gosh, like did I play too much there and show too much? So just
And then like I guess I understand Lex's thought process. If Austin wasn't in the room, you are now only like in his mind maybe pissing off one person of a duo instead of two, instead of the duo itself.
Yeah.
But what I find so interesting about this like moment and then moving forward is Emily. Emily is loyal to no one. She has been voting like wherever the heck people want her to vote. She's bouncing off between groups of people. So for Lex to feel so comfortable doing that switch in front of Emily, like, of course she's gonna take that and think of it and then like talk about it with other people. But it's like something that you would do if it's just maybe a very close ally, the person you're talking about the second time, and then the other two come in. But it's just like kudos to Emily for making people feel so comfortable, or maybe making people forget that she's in the room, for them to make moves like that and not think it's going to come back on them. It's just so interesting to watch her maneuver groups and the relationships.
We then have this group of Lex, Lo, Jon, Emily doubling down. Yeah, okay, we need to vote Lydia here. We see in the next episode, Sarah wasn't quite sure where Lydia's name comes out. This seems to be the originating point where everyone's kind of decided, yes, it's Lydia here. Lydia tells Jon she voted for him last round because she was working with Ben. Honestly, I don't think you should ever have to cop up for your votes in Survivor. But like we were already talking about, everyone seems to be wondering where all these votes are coming from. So it makes sense for her to just say, hey, I voted for you because I was working with Ben. Like there's enough reasoning there for it to make sense. Perhaps show the workings of like, we can still work together, but I'm sorry, I already wrote your name down.
Yeah.
We didn't get, oh, sorry. Yeah, Micah?
All right. I was just going to say, and like with that, like it shows like, okay, like I was voting with Ben because like he was my ally. Now I'm down an ally. So it shows like, it shows Jon that Lydia is like, okay, I have one less person to work with. Like I'm willing to work with you here now. Like, cause I'm going to be further down the pecking order. So
And like presents herself as a shield, and
Yeah.
like it makes sense. The pitch makes sense.
Yeah.
So we have Jon saying what maybe no one's noticed otherwise, but not a single woman has been voted out of this game so far.
Yeah.
Which is not common in orgs for this to happen. But not a single woman has been voted out. There are 5 of them. There are 3 men left. Jon, doesn't like, he's happy that the women are making it this far. But at the same time, he'd like a woman to go this round.
Mm-hmm.
Lex says that he's finally made his final 2 with Lowe. That's who he's sticking with. That's who he wants to work with to the end. And Austin, right before we go to tribal council, says this feels like the hardest tribal council so far because there seem to be more options than in previous rounds, which is funny because obviously the numbers are going down. But he feels that there are more names out there. There are more people to possibly get votes.
Mm-hmm.
That takes us into tribal council. I don't know how I feel about this tribal. I feel like a lot of people played this tribal council very sloppy. Lex brings up the duo chat again, and like doubles down on it, and we'll see in the next episode that it kind of like sets off Lydia's spidey sense a little bit there.
Yeah.
And then Emily, I think Emily's getting bored at this point. You can see it in the way that she says a few things in this round and the next round. She says she calls people out, says, stop coming at me with your bullshit answers about going after challenge threats because we all know that's not happening.
Yeah.
I don't know. It just felt like people were getting really sloppy in tribal council, which is a time where a lot of people tend to be very candid with their responses, keep everything very, close to themselves. But instead, we have a lot of people kind of just like spilling the tea everywhere this time around.
Yeah. It's like so interesting when Lex brings up the duo talk, and like you said, that's what kind of triggered Lydia to be like, oh, talking about me. And like she didn't have to even think he's talking about her. He says, Vee and Lydia, you're in a duo,
Yeah.
Jon and Austin, you're in a duo. And basically, more or less, we're picking between who we want to vote out. And it's, just shut up. Just stop talking. Like, it's almost like this sense of, you have the power and you have the safety in the sense of it's not going to be me, so let's stir the pot a little bit, and maybe just took it one step too far. But then it was hilarious to watch them go like, we're not a duo. Like, and you see that in their confessionals previously, like, what the heck, we're not a duo. And like, I legitimately do not think up until this point they saw themselves as a duo. They just saw themselves as 2 people on the bottom who just happened to be voting together because they were like kind of getting screwed out of votes. And maybe this duo talk will like propel them to become a duo. I don't know. It was messy and sloppy. It's a good way to put it.
Yeah, you raised a really good point there that they're less of a duo and more like the remnants of an alliance that has been decimated.
Yeah.
Mm-hmm. The Ben effect.
Yeah. So we get to the vote and we see the vote. Sarah begrudgingly votes Lydia, doesn't want to. Sarah's just such like this bleeding heart in this game. And it's great to see. It's great to see people who kind of put aside their emotions to vote correctly, but still feel it. It's nice to see that humanization of these contestants every once in a while.
Mm-hmm.
And then we get to the vote reading, and McKenna asks if anyone has a hidden immunity idol. Now would be the time to play it. And Lydia's like, I do in fact have one of those. And sure enough, we get to the votes. There are 4 votes for Lydia, which do not count. 1 vote for Vee from Austin, of all people.
Yeah.
And then 2 votes for Austin, meaning Lydia has, for the second time in this game, correctly played an idol to save herself and get her way in a vote. Austin becomes the 3rd member of the jury.
It was sad. That was sad to watch. I'm like, on one hand, so amped for Lydia. Like, that is awesome. I can't relate. But then on one hand, you're like, damn, Austin, he felt it in his bones. You could just tell going into this tribal council. But yeah, good on Lydia. Sucks for Austin. But Austin, Austin's vote on Vee is so just blows my mind because you have this Tugel of 4 that you keep talking about and you aren't even voting together and not even like splitting votes purposely. Like you have to assume you hear later maybe or in an exit or something that he says, that's the last name I heard, which could be true. But it's crazy to me that you have 8 people left in the game and you are a part of a 4-person alliance and you're not even voting together.
Yeah.
So
I mean, Michael, what do you think of Austin's game?
It was good. I felt bad for his vote out because like he just wasn't on the same page. And like, or if like he had like someone else voting with him in case Lydia has another idol, which she did, to put on Vee. So then it would be a 2-2 tie. And then like, okay, then he knows he has the numbers on his side to then get out Vee. It was just poor. I feel like poor communication on his side, like not him necessarily, but like his like alliance, I guess. And so,
but don't forget, if they did put 2 votes on Vee and there were 2 votes on Austin, it would go to Rux. And one of his alliance members is going out anyways, because then both Lydia and Vee are not on the wheel.
Yeah.
So I don't know, Austin. Please, if you didn't tell us in your exit interview, please let us know what the thought process was here for voting Vee. That takes us into the next episode.
How it crumbles,
Yeah.
Just what up. Sorry, that messed up.
So we get into the next episode. Lydia is just talking about the fact, it was sketchy. Lex was talking about duos. Managed to be in a duo. I just felt like I was getting votes. Sure enough, she was. Plays her idol, saves herself. And then we get Jon's talk, and Jon's like, everyone's talking about me in a duo with Austin. Maybe him going isn't the worst thing in the world.
Now, like, I'm a free agent in a way, so.
Yeah.
And people don't see him working with anyone else, when in, like, reality, he wasn't even working. He was working with Austin, but not that closely.
Yeah.
So, it's so interesting.
And that's the thing. And it's that conversation from last episode where Sarah says she didn't realize Jon and Austin were closer than she was with either of them. It's because they weren't.
Right.
And like that should be like alarm bells in people's heads. Sarah's saying, I didn't think they were that much closer.
Yeah.
Then we have Sarah talking about the fact that she didn't play her nullifier. And she kind of bummed she didn't play her nullifier, but at the same time, she hasn't realized there were chances for people to get idols. Like she hasn't picked up on any of these subtleties that Lydia's been picking up on, in which she's like, here's an idol. This is a way of getting an idol. She didn't notice the name change that got Lydia the second idol. Because of that, she's having a hard time figuring out how to properly use this idol nullifier.
Yeah. Which, and to be fair to Sarah, like my first org, I was terrible. Like my second org, I was still terrible with finding idols and being like, I don't know what to look for exactly. Where like now, like I've been like in the org community for a little bit. Like I've started to pick up on like the letters are changing in the names, and so it's like, okay, something's happening with that. Like that's clearly something. But like when you're in the game as well, you're kind of like, you're not like I was like more focused on like, getting instructions or like whatnot, or like having conversations rather than like looking around and seeing what's out of place.
So. And I like, to Sarah's defense and benefit, the last time an idol was on the table, even everyone was talking about it. Like, so maybe she just thinks the next time an idol's on the table, if there's another idol, like people are going to talk about it.
Yeah.
Like can't stop talking about their advantages and who they're voting for. So it's if you're not looking for those clues, or that might be something that would ring your alarm bells of I should play this or
Yeah.
but also I feel like I would have played if I know it's expiring soon and like this tribal's messy and it may not go the way of mine or my alliance's way, I'm gonna play that Nullifier because like in my mind, people are just chirping at each other. If someone feels uncomfortable, they're gonna play something. And if you waste it, no one knows really. I mean, except for Jon. No one knows.
Yeah.
So
yeah, I mean the way this Nullifier was provided really did give the opportunity for her to play it in this instance. And this is probably the instance where you want to be playing it, even if you don't think Lydia has an idol, because if that happens, you get Lydia out at final 8. You now have a 4-person alliance to get to the end of the game with.
Yeah. If everyone votes together.
Yeah.
Yes.
If everyone's on the same page, not wandering their votes.
Yeah. Then we get Vee talking about how she's a bit frustrated because she's now like cemented herself at the bottom. She's voted on the wrong side so many times. She's definitely on the bottom right now. And wanting to make some move here and elevate her game a little bit. We then get to our immunity challenge, which is Tilted Tower. So in this challenge, the contestants are setting up solo cups 6 feet apart, and they have to transfer alternating rings made of folded index cards and ping pong balls using only straws from one cup to the other cup. Mike, you helped us test this challenge.
I did.
Give us some insight into it.
I was trash at this. Like I helped test the pyramid cups, the one that the immunity that Ben won, and I was like, I blew through that. I was like, perfect, let's go. But when it came to the ping pong ball and the 2 straws, I just couldn't get it. I'm like struggling. Like I don't know how people how Jon got through it so quickly. I was struggling, like just getting the first ping pong ball to the cup. Like I was struggling with the first one. So like I was impressed by all of them for getting like at least to the ring and like, dang, you did what I could not do. I have my strengths, you have your strengths. I have my weaknesses. It's fine.
And as Micah says, Jon just kind of flies through this challenge. He collects those rings and balls so quickly, wins immunity. He has taken off his training vest. He is ready to go now, much to his chagrin a little later when we get to what happens on this round. But we seem to have Jon unleashed now. He's ready to just go balls to the wall.
Mm-hmm.
Vee feels like she really needed this win. Again, she's feeling on the bottom. She's worried she's going to be targeted here. And she realizes she's just on the opposite side of Jon. And she realizes that because Jon has immunity, that's not good for her because Jon can kind of push the vote a little harder because he has this immunity.
Yeah.
Lo says this was the hardest challenge for her because her straws suck, and not in the way straws are supposed to suck.
Yeah.
Was there like a... Oh, go ahead, Micah.
I just noticed, like, I was watching her at one point where like she was still on like the second ring, putting it on the ping pong ball, and she was struggling with that. I was like, interesting, like how she was doing, because like I believe I did it like where I had like one straw, it was on it, and then the other straw was on top to like then slide it off. Where the way that she was doing it like made it more complicated somehow. So I was like, all right. So
I was going to ask if there's like a clarification in the supplies. Like, did it have to be a plastic straw?
Plastic straw was clarified.
Okay. Because a metal straw would have been so easy.
Yeah, that's why we make that designation of it has to be a plastic straw. It's getting a little harder for contestants in Canada because finding plastic straws up here, very difficult. They have replaced them all with paper straws.
Yeah.
So I have straws from my first game still sitting on deck in case I need them at some point.
Yeah.
But yes, plastic straws, because the problem is like there's a lot of difference between certain plastic straws, right? And like the tensile strength of your plastic straw will depend on what you're doing. Your basic like fast food restaurant straw, probably your best bet. But if you see plastic straw and you think, oh, I got these couple of like bendy straws, they should be fine.
Yeah.
Sometimes, yeah, like
McDonald's
that's
what you want.
yeah.
Those things are
So
indestructible.
we've talked about it many times already this season, mostly with Selkirk supplies. But
Yeah.
picking your supplies, very important.
Yeah.
Yes.
Jon and Lydia discussed the fact that they're going after each other. They know it. They understand that they're going after each other. Lydia is still trying to build that relationship she put forward last round of saying, "Hey, like I know I didn't vote for you last round. I voted for your ally instead, but like we should work together still. We're threatening people, right?"
Yeah.
Emily again. This is where you can really tell Emily's frustrated at this point because she says she hates the fact these SWAT tribes are sticking together.
I want to play Survivor. Let's play Survivor.
So then Lydia and Emily are kind of just discussing how that Lex moment from last episode where Lex is just so good at lying. He's so good at playing in the middle. He's so good at making you think he's with you completely. We get it intercut with Lex saying that he wants Lydia or Vee out because he doesn't want his lies to catch up with him. He doesn't realize his lies are already catching up with him. And it's not because of Lydia and Vee. It is because of Emily. He has not picked the right person to target here.
Yeah.
And then Emily and Lydia also talk about how Lo is way too dangerous at this point. She's playing a very solid, under the radar game. She's strong in competitions. She's very convincing in conversations with her, and she's very fluid in her game, and she has to go. Well, we get a little bit of talk before we get to the end of this episode, but I guess they're going to be a little happy with the results. Emily has a confessional where she's just worried everyone's going to be voting for her because it's the logical thing to do. It's what she would do in this position. Is McKenna, like, does this type of paranoia hit you in the game at all points? Where it's like, if I were in everyone else's positions, I would be voting for me. So it must be a vote for me now.
Yeah, I'm like super paranoid when I play. Maybe not so much as you, Jon, but
very paranoid.
Like, I'm in every confessional. I'm like, if it's not me, I hope it's this person. And I do, not because I view myself as like a huge threat, but also just because like I don't trust anybody. But I also trust everyone too much. So I'm sitting there like, oh my God, combing through their lies. And then, I'm like, did I say something wrong? Are they actually voting for me? Yeah, I think it's me every vote. And when it's not, I'm like, good, let's move forward.
Love to hear it. I'll do whatever.
We then get one of the most baffling confessionals I have seen in a long time. Sarah wants to propose a girls' alliance at the final 7 when there are 5 girls left. Micah, what do you think about this?
I think it's too late for that. Seeing that there's only 2 guys left in the game, it's like I feel like there's like an obvious like kind of pecking order anyways. So it's like no, like maybe like 3-4 rounds beforehand, like you could have started something so then you can make it to the final 5. But it's definitely too late where it's like, okay, in the next 2 votes someone's gone, and then okay, now who? So I just think it's too late. It's funny to hear because like in my head, like watching it, it's like I'm like I love to see like the girls make it so far, but it's also like, and the fact that they haven't even paired up with each other and like boom, like there's 2 different sides, but yet no one's targeting, like no one's successfully getting them out is what I should say, because they're targeting the females, but they're safe. So
yeah, it's like a double-edged sword here. Like I love this from Sarah because it shows me that she's taken her Tugela blinders off. And, I think maybe that's why it wasn't proposed earlier is like, also she just lost her number one. Like Austin was her number one. And so like I love this thought process of like, maybe she's thinking, how can I propel myself further in the game. But also never make a girls alliance. They never work. Someone always turns on them. Just word from experience. Never do it. Lie about it. Say you're in one, but never do it.
Never follow through. No follow through. No.
Always be the turncoat.
Yes. They never work.
Yeah, and there's always that looming threat of a girls' alliance too, right? And it's one of the worst stigmas in Survivor in general, that everyone fears the women's alliance. But because, I don't know, the way I see it in orgs, women tend to be at a disadvantage just because of the community. There tend to be more men applying for games than there are women. Let's just get the facts out there.
Yeah.
Obviously, at Dynamic Character Productions, we try to even those numbers as much as possible. But you can only pull from the pool of who's willing to play the game.
Yeah.
And it's fascinating seeing these 5 women get this far in a game. Again, it does not happen very often. But it's proposing that, it's just, people expect it in a mini, especially because in a mini, you're always grasping for that one connecting thing to bring you together, because it's the easiest way to connect with people. And being a woman can be one of the most obvious ways that you are similar to someone sometimes.
Yeah.
So it's risky. I agree, McKenna. I do like the fact that Sarah is like, okay, I have to branch out from what I was working with before, and I have to think moving forward. It's just, this thought does seem like it came a little too late. And it kind of goes to what I was saying earlier, how it feels like Sarah's just a step behind in the strategy a lot of the time.
It makes me wonder, on top of that, because she was the only female on her starting tribe, so it's like she didn't really have like an option to like bond with another female. So it's like, and then swap happened and then merge. So it's like she like was kind of committed to the guys, and then they start going, and it's like, well, okay, maybe this isn't my best way to get to the end. Maybe I do need to, there's still 4 other girls left. Like, let's team up with them. So, like, I get where she's coming from, but it's also like, it's the cards that she was dealt with.
Yeah. And that like really worried her in the beginning too, because she made that comment several times. Like, I'm the only girl. I'm the obvious choice. I'm the obvious choice, which is like the same stuff that I say and same stuff that I think. But yeah, I think then she got comfortable with Austin, and then instead of thinking like, I'm the only girl, she's like, I need to find another newbie, because like that became her new, like, I want to get people that have played before. So yeah, like I think this was good thinking from her. I just think it was too late.
Yeah.
So they get Lex talking about how Lydia is just too. There's no way they can let Lydia get to the end here. She just played 2 idols correctly. She hasn't burned a single person on the jury. Like, she's in too good of a position. And even Vee in a confessional says she knows she has to cut Lydia at some point. Because it's just not someone you want to sit down with at the end after playing 2 successful idols.
If I was Vee, I wouldn't want to sit next to Lydia. I would want to cut her as soon as possible, because, like, yeah, sure, people view us as a duo, but they would see Lydia as the head, and I'm just like the follower. And it's like, okay, I'm not going to get very many votes because Lydia's there. So, yeah, smart on Vee.
So then we get to the disappointing part of the episode. Lo tells Lex, hey, I realized this was a big commitment. I didn't realize it was going to go until the point where my doggy daycare was going to be closed. So I have to leave. Like, it's not pertinent that I leave right this moment, but I have to leave pretty soon because I need to go get my dog before this place closes. And this takes up a good chunk of the episode here. This like middle section leading up to tribal council is everyone just discussing the fact that, it sucks. It sucks when someone has to leave a game because of a not game related reason. Especially someone like Lo, who, as Vee says, was playing a perfect game up to this point.
Literally.
to make it to Final 8 and not have a single vote against you is an accomplishment. And Lo, you should be very proud of the game you played, because if you had the opportunity to continue playing this game, I don't doubt you would be fighting for a win there at Final Tribal Council.
Yeah.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah.
Like even with the conversations about people being wary of Lo at this point, like Lo still was, nobody felt that they could ever get enough votes to get Lo out.
Correct. Mm-hmm. Like no one was like, okay, we should vote Lo. Like no one was throwing out her name. They were like thinking like, oh, Lo like is a threat here, but we can't vote her. Like they wanted to keep her still. And it's like that says something about her game. And I loved watching her like maneuver all the way to this point. And it's like to see her go because of her dog, it's like, no, I was rooting for you all the way. Like, it was so upsetting.
Yeah, it was upsetting. Yeah. I like remember day of when it was happening. We're like, no, this isn't real.
Like, can you find someone else like in the neighborhood to pick the dog up?
Yeah, it was definitely disappointing, because we don't want to see people leave this way. We want to see people be able to play it out. I guess future DCP applicants realize you need a full day.
And like, to be fair, Lo's on the West Coast.
Yeah.
And her doggy daycare, she said, closes at 7, and she started playing at 7. So like, not saying it's not a full day, but that's a full day.
That's a full day. That's a full day.
So just like make it a full day and a half.
Yeah, just be ready to go till midnight.
Is there an overnight thing like for the doggy daycare? Like, let them stay there.
So we do start seeing a little bit of people maneuvering for the future here now that it's pretty settled. Everyone's going to vote Lo out. We see Lex and Sarah finally say, hey, you know what? We're both from Seattle. Let's make a final 2.
That moment right there when Lo's in the room. So see, I can't remember if it was like in earlier this episode or if it was the previous episode where Lex and Lo made a final 2. And,
it was previous episode, yeah.
Yeah, previous episode. And then Lex says to Sarah in front of Lo, I've never said these words. I've never made a final 2. And you can see Lo's like kind of laughing. Yeah. Like okay. Lo's still going to be on the jury.
Yeah. Also, Lo can still talk to people this round.
Right. Yeah. I would have been like, actually.
Excuse me, hold up. I'm still in this game.
So it's funny. When I heard it the first time, like I watched the episode a couple times, because when I heard it the first time, I was like, wait, I thought I just heard you make a final 2 with Lo.
Yeah.
When I watched it the second time, I was like, oh my God, Lo's in the room.
Yeah, and we see Emily's response to Lo having to leave being like, this is bad for my game. Which is interesting. It's interesting that Emily feels that Lo is someone who she needs there to get to the end game. Because we haven't really seen that type of relationship between Emily and Lo. But when you think about it, like they've both kind of been playing this like middle floaty game for this, like the bird section of this game. So it makes sense especially because people have been starting to talk about Lo as a challenge threat. So I can see where Emily's coming from with this analysis she's providing us. We then get to Tribal Council, and Alex just cuts right to it. Sounds like someone needs to go. Do you want to like say anything? And Lo does, in fact, like give the explanation to the entire tribe in the same room. But something else is happening in the meantime. McKenna, not this McKenna, the other McKenna, is fiddling around with a deck of cards and very blatantly showing the Ace of Clubs. I knew she did this day of. I did not realize it was just like this Ace of Clubs is sitting over here, and I'm going to just grab it and put it on screen every once in a while. It was very obvious, but it seems like only one person picked up on it. And of course, that was Lydia.
Classic.
Of course, why not get a third idol? You are definitely, Lydia, you have become the advantage queen of DCP. You have surpassed myself and Morgan Jackson, who were tied with you with 2. Now you have 3. You have superseded us and are now in sole possession of most advantages found in a single game.
Legend.
Yeah. Legend.
We get to the vote, and we just see everyone's voting professional. Everyone's really torn up about having to vote out Low here. Low, of course, we are sad to see you go. Low puts her vote on Vee, just because, Vee might have something. So
she can't vote for herself.
Yeah, she can't vote for herself. I mean, her vote didn't really matter here.
Yeah.
Who would you have voted for if you were in Low's position? I'm not the one asking the questions, but
that's a great question, because I don't know, because the way Low's game's been going, because you're kind of putting a target on someone. So I don't know. Who do you? Maybe Lex, because he just pulled that final 2 bullshit in front of you, but I don't know. What do you think, Mike? Who would you have put the vote on?
I think she wouldn't want to blow up Lex's game at this point, since they were close, and the only reason why like Seattle Lights came together was because Low said, I have to go. So I think if it was me, I would put it on someone that I'm like, okay, I see your game, like it's not out there. I would probably put it on Emily, because like she's playing a sly game. Like it's a great game, and it's like no one's really picking up on like what she's doing. So yeah.
So with that, Low's gone. Let's get straight into an immunity challenge. Oh wait, what's that? A second immunity challenge in the same episode? What's going on here, DCP? And this immunity challenge is fairly straightforward. It's called Order Up, and simply shuffle a deck of cards. Order that deck of cards in each of the 4 suits, ace, low, up to king. It seems too good to be true, too easy. Well, let me tell you, when you get a challenge that seems too easy, probably means something's up their sleeve. And in fact, I do want to say, these people sorted these cards so slow. And maybe that's just me, who is someone who sorts cards very, very frequently. But man, I felt this was taking forever to sort these cards. But eventually, the big thing I should also mention is that once you call for a check, everyone has to stop sorting while the check occurs. And if you get it incorrect, you cannot submit another check until every single person has submitted a wrong check. A lot of pressure on you to get this right the first time.
Yeah.
Maybe that's why they're moving slow.
Because they're like
perhaps
making sure. Yeah.
Emily calls for a check first. And I love this moment of, we were talking about Lex's response to winning immunity last time. The building momentum as she like reveals the cards one at a time. To the moment where she realizes she wins immunity, she also has this triumphant celebration.
Leaves the screen. It was awesome.
Yeah. And then Alex drops the bombshell. Yeah, you have 3 minutes right now to decide what's happening before we go to the vote. No scramble. You're still in tribal council. The jury's still here. 3 minutes go. Oh, this is a moment that I don't know. I think Emily does exactly what you're supposed to do here, especially as the person who's won immunity. She throws that in there. Just says, hey, Lydia, want to vote Lex? And Lex, you can see, is so taken aback by the notion of his name getting out there, he doesn't know how to respond.
Yeah.
And Sarah even gives him the moment. Sarah gives him the option. She says, hey, Lex, who would you vote? Whose name do you want to put out there? And he won't give a name.
That was stupid on his part. Like, I love you, Lex, but like, how can you like, if someone's saying your name, then that means like you need to say a name. And clearly, like, you can't say Emily's name because Emily's safe. So you need to be like, okay, well, I'd be down to vote Vee, or I'd be down to vote Lydia, seeing as their threats. And so you got to say something. Otherwise, you're out. You're gone. So,
okay, what do you think?
Well, if I was in Emily's position, I can see why she says Lex's name. Like I get it. And we see that build up coming, you know. I'm not Emily and I don't play like Emily. And I'm a little more apt to like sit back on my haunches a little bit. But if I think there was a confessional about Jon having too much power and then like, you know, you might not have it next week or next time. Like that's always in the back of my mind. So Emily, or if I'm Emily and I have immunity and I'm just like, yo, let's go this person, especially someone that's so well connected, all I'm thinking is it's me next time. So I feel like if I were to throw a name, it would have been like a Vee or a Jon. Like, let's eliminate the rest of that duo. Let's break up the other duo. Like, bring that duo conversation back. I think Emily going for Lex here is a better option because he's a bigger threat, but that's just not what I would have done.
I really think what it comes down to with why Emily's making this decision, because Emily didn't do it immediately. She waited a little while,
right.
And it became very clear pretty quickly no one was going to say a name.
Mm-hmm.
So you don't want to just leave things up a chance. You want to get something out there. Mm-hmm. And she had been pushing this Lex narrative for 2 rounds prior to this now. So the fact of the matter is she had already been planting these seeds to get Lex voted out in this position. So it made sense for her to say Lex's name here. Could you have said like a Vee or a Lydia or a Jon or even a Sarah here? Absolutely. But at this point, I don't know. You just kind of have to go for it and hope that I would imagine that Emily feels her connection with Jon and Sarah is enough that she can go against Vee and Lydia next round.
Mm-hmm.
But it's risky, but it's less risky because she has a necklace on. And it's like, yes, she has to realize she doesn't have power next round. Mm-hmm. But at the same time, you have to take advantage of power when you have it. And this late in the game, you may never have it again.
Exactly.
Yeah. And if people like, I guess it's different as a viewer because people are starting to kind of clock Emily a little bit of like writing stuff down, and she is kind of the swing vote, and not so much that they want to vote her out, but maybe it was a good spot for her, but she doesn't know people don't see her as a threat. So like for me, I'm like, that's putting a huge target on your back as someone that you're like going against someone that you were working with closely, you know, just so blatantly. I don't know. It's just not what I would have done. And I feel like I would have gone for an easier option, but you're right. She was setting that Lex narrative up for a while.
Yeah.
And the other thing we have to remember, she said it last episode, people should be voting her. She thinks the logical decision is for people to vote her. So I don't think she's thinking she's blowing up her game here because she thinks these people should already be targeting me.
I respect it. I respect that move. Like it's gutsy and but just I'm like way more cautious as people probably know.
So we get to the vote. And I think Jon's confessional here, when he puts out Sarah's name of all people, is very good because he explains that himself, Sarah, and Vee, none of them said a name. None of them said who they were voting for. So in order to avoid rocks, he's throwing a vote on Sarah because he doesn't think a single other person's going to vote for Sarah here.
Yeah.
This is very smart. And I like the fact that he has the game awareness to say, oh, why didn't we say a name? That was really dumb of us.
Yeah.
And then, of course, we're in this chaotic vote. So Lydia plays her third hidden immunity idol to the shock of literally everyone. I don't know why everyone's so shocked that Lydia keeps having these. I guess it's just oh, well, there shouldn't be any more left. And Lydia keeps pulling them out of her pocket. But she didn't need to. I know from my experience with idols, I would end up playing an idol here, just because in a vote where it's so all over the place, you have no idea what's going to happen.
Mhm.
It's better
Yeah.
to guarantee your safety than it is to hold it on. And she only gets one more round with it anyways. It's only good till
Yeah.
final 5. So if there's even a small chance she goes home here, it's safer to play the idol now and just play the next round as hard as possible.
Yeah.
And that's it, because Lex does end up going home here.
Yeah.
Any
Sad.
final words on Lex's game?
Lex played to the wall the whole game. From the Andrew boot, like we were talking about, Lex is playing loud, he's playing all over the place, and it's so impressive. Like final 6 is something that's so impressive in and of itself, but for you to be in everybody's pocket kind of this whole time, or you have everyone in your pocket this whole time all the way to final 6, and just kind of like a screwy situation sent you home. Maybe if they had a longer time, 20 more minutes or whatever, Lex could have talked himself out of it and they could have gone for Lydia, again, maybe unsuccessfully. But it just is so impressive for you to be playing so big, and it was so fun to watch.
Yeah, he definitely had a big game. Just watching him, he's a big character. And just like seeing him maneuver the different dynamics of people just to stay alive, and like form these bonds with being like, hey, like we have these levels on like trust, and like we can go further, and like not really being a target for a good while too. So it's like way to make it this far. And I think if it was like a normal round where they did have scramble rooms and all that and more time, I think he would have come out victorious and safe, because then he could have like regrouped, and I don't think like Emily would have had the chance to do like, oh, let's get Lex this round, or like be as vocal, because like that set her up further on. But like he played an excellent game. I would be proud of it. So.
Absolutely. And I just want to reiterate, Lex played this way all day. He's such a huge ball of energy from 7 o'clock in the morning all the way 12 hours later to his elimination.
Yeah.
Fantastic character. One of the best we have ever had in dynamic character productions. Such a joy to just get to watch him all day. That brings us to the end of this week's episodes. So we have one last thing to do before we sign off here. We got to talk MVPs. Last week's audience MVP went to Austin. It's okay. He wasn't voted out until this week. So it was last week's MVP. McKenna, who have you got for your MVP this week?
So I take MVP so seriously. Like you don't even...
as the most valuable player in Monte Carlo, I would expect you to.
Yeah, I'm like want to pass this on to somebody, that deserves it. So I thought long and hard about this, but the second episode, it didn't give us much. It gave us a little bit, didn't give us much, but it gave me my MVP. My MVP this week is going to Jon. I think Jon is arguably in one of the best positions left in the game. I think Jon has been in a good position this entire time. I think he has set himself up well socially. People keep talking about he's a challenge threat, but he just won his first immunity challenge. He's been able to evade votes. And this week specifically, the conversation with Vee, where he had his confessional talking about Vee, and then he goes to this conversation with her and says, maybe we can get something going, like maybe we can work together. He is protected on both sides. He has that Vee Lydia potential, and he has that Sarah, Lex, Emily potential, to fall back on. And I just think he's in such a great position. And then paired with the voting confessional where he splits the votes, like there's a lot going on, and you got to be quick on your feet. And I'm admittedly not. And so for him to be able to just think like that and do it and put it on somebody where it's not really going to make a ton of waves. I think he deserves it.
That's fair. That's fair.
Micah, who are you giving your MVP to?
I don't. I guess I don't take it as serious as McKenna, but like
Fair.
I still like I'm a competitive individual. I'm not on prod, so like I didn't see them play it during the day as well. So what I'm seeing is the edit fully. And so like what I want as well is like, okay, how I'm seeing it is I'm rooting for this person. Like I find this person the best right now maybe not in the best spot, but like things can always change in a mini game. So, and I think Emily, she has like great options in the future where like, yeah, she has these great things about her, but then like she also has like these things that could hurt her as well further down the line. But like it'll be interesting to see what she does further down the line. And just seeing her like win today, like as she like was like flipping the cards, like as she was getting closer, 9, like she was getting all excited, 10, Jack, and like it was so much fun to watch as she was going through each suit. And so definitely my MVP of the week.
Well, I think it's just a disservice if we don't mention Lydia with finding her third idol, her second successful idol play. Lydia is just so in touch with this game. Yes, she finds herself kind of on the bottom. She finds herself in a position where everyone kind of realizes, okay, Lydia can't stick around. But the fact that she gets through this 3-minute round with only Lex putting a vote on her, with only Lex saying her name, huge. Yeah. So impressive what she's able to do here. Really look forward to seeing what happens next week.
Yeah.
But that's it. That's all we have for you this week. Thank you, everyone, for tuning in. Don't forget to click that like and subscribe button, ring that bell, get those notifications for when all your Dynamic Character Productions content goes up. We have episodes dropping every Monday and Thursday, exit interviews on Wednesdays and Saturdays, and your weekly recap every Sunday. Make sure you follow us on Instagram, join the Facebook group. We're so close to 500. Put us over that top. Get us to 500 on the Facebook group. And we can't wait to see you again next week.